for film and theaters. I cried like the first 30 minutes, like just fully sobbed. It meant so much to me to go see it. And I'm also really happy that the one song she played from debut was our song. It made me so happy. Highly recommend going. It was absolutely insane. She's on another level. It's currently Friday night on the 3rd of November, which is actually my mom's birthday. So happy birthday, Mom. Today I kind of wanted to talk about my experience traveling. I mentioned in my last kebab talk, Thai talk, food talk. Can we just call it a food talk at this point? I mentioned in that talk that I have been traveling for 6 years, and I just kind of wanted to go over that in this video and kind of condense all 6 years into one little story time. Also, if you knew me at all in the past, you would know that I hate broccoli, or at least I did until now. It's so weird. It's in like every Thai dish you get here. And so like I tried to just pick around it for a while, and then I'd get like little pieces, and then I was like, okay, I'm fine with the little pieces, but I'm not eating the big pieces. And then now it has just evolved into me being like today is the first time that I'm like, no, this is actually pretty fire. It still grosses me out to eat it by itself. Like I have to have like some rice in there with it. But I'm now a broccoli gal. I had no interest in school as a kid, even though I did get like decent grades. Like grades weren't an issue. I just had no interest. Right when I found out that there was a way for me to graduate a year early, I jumped on it. So I just had to do one class of English over summer school, and then everything else, I had all the other credits. I was due to graduate 2017. I ended up graduating 2016, but I was already young for my grade, so I graduated like a month after I turned 17. So even though I was graduated, I still had to live under my parents' reign for a year. So in that year, I just decided, hey, I've always wanted to travel. I don't know what got into me, because like nobody in my family travels. I'm kind of the black sheep in that way. None of them even have their passports, which is wild to me. I've always just wanted to see what's out there. I've always wanted to learn by experience rather than learn it through a textbook. I was like, okay, I'm gonna work. There's a rat in the bushes. So when I graduated, there's a rat right next to me. He's gonna try to steal my food. So I worked 3 jobs right when I graduated. I was a dental hygienist assistant, I worked at a shoe store, and I worked at a movie theater. And I've had a lot of odd jobs throughout travels, so I think that should be a separate video talking about all of my odd jobs that I've had. I basically worked so much in that year that I was able to save up about $10,000. And I had also heard about au pairing online. So au pairing, if you don't know, is basically like going over, living with a family, and your main priority is teaching their kids, like the kids, English. And you do like sort of nanny the kids in a way, but your main priority is teaching them the language. So I just had to speak English to some kids, and I got free room and board. You don't get really paid at all. You get like an allowance, but that's about it. Quit all 3 of my jobs, moved to Italy at 18, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I got there and I stayed with them for like 2 weeks, I think. I was meant to be there for 3 months. I was like having panic attacks every time I tried to sleep. I couldn't be alone. Like just the thought of being so far away from home was so much for me. I just wasn't ready for it at the time. I was way too young. I rushed into it. So I ended up leaving after like 2 weeks, and I was like, okay, I want to at least see some of Italy. So I booked a train to Venice, and I got to see Venice and Rome, and I stayed in Rome for like 2 weeks. It just wasn't the right time for me. I loved Italy. I loved my experience. It's just I got super homesick, and I left. So then I went back to Indiana, where I'm from. I got my jobs back. I worked so much. I saved up more money, and then at that time I was like, okay, I fucked up, and I don't think like staying in one place is maybe for me, because I was getting panic attacks. So I was like, maybe I'll just go and do like a backpacker thing. I've already stayed in hostels, so I ended up going on a Europe trip, a solo Europe trip. And I went back to Europe that same year, And I did London, Brighton, Amsterdam, Paris, Barcelona, and then I flew to Reykjavik to have a little layover, and then I came back home. And after that, I went back home and I worked so much again. So then I worked for a couple more months until I hated it again and I wanted to go back abroad. My friend texted me and said, hey, let's go to Thailand. So I, of course, said yes. I wanted out again. We were in Thailand for a month. We just bounced around everywhere. We went to the islands, the full moon party, all of that. It was so much fun. After a month in Thailand, I went back to Europe and we flew to Paris together to meet a couple other of our friends. So I went back to Paris, spent about a week in Paris, went to Portugal on a whim. So we were in Portugal. Then I said goodbye to them in Porto and I flew to Madrid, where I was like, okay, maybe I'll give au pairing a try again. At that time, it had been like a year since I had au paired for the first time. All right, I've done a bit more travel. Maybe I can do it now. Well, I was with a family in Ciudad Real. That au pair experience went a lot better because I felt a lot more sure of myself and I knew that I wanted to travel and experience new things. Like, I was sure about that. So my homesickness went away, but the family itself, they were lovely. It's just I did not really get on with the kids. So after that month, I went to Madrid, stayed a couple more days there, and then flew back home. It was a lot of money. So at that time, I was out of the country for about 2 months, which is the most ever. At that time, I was 19. And then I just kind of bounced around. I did like odd trips here and there until COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I had plans to move to New Zealand. So that got pushed back by 2 years. I did not get to go to New Zealand until 2022. And so in those 2 years, I lived all over the States. So I lived in Tennessee as a zipline guide. So I have myself clipped in. This is my trolley. These are my whitetails. And then all you gotta do is pick up your feet and you're zipping. I went to Catalina Island and I worked as a barista.
I don't want to do part 2. Oh, we're on the uphill.
She's a natural.
Look at you. I worked on Mount Rainier. I worked at a ski resort for 2 winters in Montana. It's a really cool way to see the States, and honestly, it gave me a much bigger appreciation for where I'm from. Once the borders opened up though for New Zealand, I got an email saying that they had renewed my visa. So I moved to New Zealand and I was there for a year.
Go! Hands up!
I spoke to Instagram.
That visa was ending, and so I applied for my Australian visa and I am now here. And just an FYI, those are the only 2 visas as a US citizen that you can get without a degree. So if you're just like a normal US citizen between the ages of 18 and 35, you have 2 options. It's Australia and New Zealand to come work, and I can work and stay here for a year. Been in Australia now for almost 3 months coming up, and I'm getting ready to say goodbye to Sydney in about a week, which is insane, and I get to see the rest of Australia.
I want matching PJs with you.
That's a really short version of what I've been up to in the last 6 years. Really talking about this like shows how messy it's kind of been. I just like really haven't had a plan. My main focus has just been travel. And I feel like there's definitely better ways to go about it. But I was young. Funny thing is now I am thinking about college and like thinking about how can I make travel easier for me, because this sort of travel wears on you. Like, I'm always worried about money. I'm always worried about where I'm gonna be next, where I'm gonna sleep. And I know I'm capable of so much more. So yeah, I'm looking into other avenues of how to go about life in general. My brain is almost fully developed, so that's exciting. In other news, I'm reading such a good book right now. Highly recommend. It's called Breasts and Eggs. It's so good. I'm usually not a really fast reader, but I've been getting through this book like so fast. I'm almost done with it, and I got it 2 days ago. The easiest way to describe it would just be to say it's about womanhood in Japan. I also just finished another incredible book. This book is probably like my all-time favorite at the moment. It's called Nobody Is Ever Missing, and it's by Catherine Lacey. And like, I read it so quickly as well, but I was like crying trying to take it all in. This bug as well is crying. I'm definitely becoming a recluse. It is currently like, what time is it now? Almost 10 o'clock on a Friday night. I'm sitting alone in this park eating Thai food and talking to a camera. Thank you so much for catching up. I'll see you next time.